Every time we read a book, we change. We feel more deeply and think more boldly. Scholastic believes every act of reading has the power to spark positive change and progress. It makes us think more, be more, and do more.
Good morning, Scholastic family. Welcome back to our second session of the Back to School Live Seminar. 안녕하세요. 신학기를 맞이해 스콜라스틱이 준비한 문해력 전문가 라이브 방송 그 두 번째 세션에 오신 것을 환영합니다. 네, 오늘도 진행을 맡게 된 스콜라스틱 코리아 손보라입니다. 반갑습니다. 네, 지난주 제니스 베런스 편집장님 세션에 이어서 오늘은 미셸 버기스 선생님을 모시고 다시 찾았습니다. 네, 지난주와 마찬가지로 본 인터뷰는 영어로 진행될 거예요. 네, 여러분의 이해를 돕기 위해 화면에 연사분의 말씀이 한글로 제공되고 또 그때그때 통역이 필요한 부분은 제가 하도록 하겠습니다. 인터뷰 끝에는 질의응답 시간이 마련돼 있어요. 궁금하신 사항이 있으시면 메모해 두셨다가 질문해 주시면 감사하겠습니다. 시간 관계상 모든 분들의 질문에 저희가 답을 못 해드리는 점 양해 부탁드립니다. 네. 오늘의 연사님이신 미셸 버기스 선생님 소개를 해드릴게요. 네. 미셸 버기스 선생님은요, 20년 이상이나 미국 공립학교에서 영어를 가르쳐 오셨어요. 미국에서는 영어 과목을 Language Arts라고 하죠. 예, 현재 미국 캘리포니아주 Richmond Street School 선생님이시면서 LA에 있는 페퍼다인 대학에서 겸임 교수로 학생들에게 교수법 교육을 또 하고 계십니다. 현직에서 초등 이제 1, 2학년을 현재 가르치고 계셔서 아무래도 미국 현장의 이야기와 팁을 들을 수 있는 더욱 소중한 자리가 아닌가 싶습니다. 미셸 선생님은요, 또 저희 스콜라스틱 티칭 스페셜리스트세요. 저희와 여러 번 협업을 통해서 저희는 잘 알고 있고요. 저도 개인적으로 미셸 선생님이 얼마나 리딩에 대해 어떤 지식이 풍부하시고 또 열정이 엄청 크신 거를 제가 알기 때문에 오늘 여러분과 함께 이 자리를 마련하게 되어 기쁩니다. 네. 오늘 선생님을 모시고 리딩 교육에서 정말 중요한 빼놓을 수 없는 파닉스와 사이트워드에 대한 이야기를 나누려고 해요. 아마 우리가 다양한 학습서, 워크북, 그다음 플래시카드 같은 걸로 막연하게 알고 있었던 것에 대해서 오늘 좀 명확하게, 정확하게 짚어볼 수 있는 시간이 될 것 같습니다. 네, 그럼 이제 선생님을 한번 모셔볼까요? So I'm very excited to invite our special guest today, Michelle Varghese from Richmond Street. Michelle, are you there? Hello.
안녕하세요. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
Wow, the pleasure is ours too. Welcome back. This is not your first time meeting the Korean audience, I believe. Would you like to say again hello to the Korean audience?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm excited to talk about phonics and sight words. Thank you for having me back. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you for making the time for us. I know it's a bit late there in LA, but I think it's an incredible, important opportunity for us to learn more about sight words and phonics, which are such important foundational skills of literacy. Let us start with a couple of questions to learn about them. Are you ready?
Absolutely.
Great. 그럼 지금부터 미셸 선생님과 함께 파닉스와 사이트워드에 대해서 제가 한번 질문을 드리도록 하겠습니다. First thing first, I think we hear a lot about phonics and sight words. They're often used here in language centers and private institutes. Can you tell us what they are and why they are so important? And are they also taught in the US?
Great questions. Thanks, Bora. So first of all, to understand what phonics and sight words are, let's talk about their place on the larger stage of foundational literacy skills. When learning to read, students learn the alphabet, they learn print concepts, and in English, that means we read from left to right and top to bottom. Students also develop phonological awareness. They study and practice phonics, sight words, comprehension, and fluency. all of these skills are required to become independent readers who understand what they read. Many U.S. kindergarten, first grade, and second grade teachers do devote at least part of their day to teaching phonics and sight words, and today we'll address their place in reading and literacy instruction. Specifically, phonics is the study of the systematic relationship between phonemes, which are speech sounds, and graphemes, the written letters that represent those sounds. Prior to students learning phonics, they need to have phonemic awareness. Now, phonemic awareness is a more sophisticated component of phonological awareness. Phonemic awareness is the ability to reflect on and consciously manipulate the phonemes, those spoken speech sounds, in words. It's crucial to building a strong phonics foundation. Students need to hear, identify, and manipulate the phonemes because we can't expect students to read or write words or sounds that they can't identify. So we need to build phonemic awareness before doing more conscious phonics work. Now that I've defined phonemic awareness, I'll show you a short exercise demonstrating how it can be used in the classroom. For example, let's say that I'm the teacher. I instruct my students to say the word cat. You might say that at home or wherever you are, cat. Now, I would instruct my students to identify the sounds that they hear in that word. Ah. Notice that I'm not asking my students to spell the word or say the letters, not yet, because the emphasis is really on hearing and distinguishing those sounds, not on spelling the word. Let's try another word, stand. Say the word stand. And now say the sounds that you hear in that word. You might even stretch out that word on your hand like this. D. There are 5 phonemes in that word. This kind of phonemic awareness activity is an important precursor to identifying letter sounds, to rhyming, spelling. All of those skills are part of a strong phonics instruction.
아이들이 파닉스를 학습하기에 앞서서 이제 소리를 구분할 수 있는 phonemic awareness, 즉 음소 인식 능력이 있어야 하고 방금 선생님께서 활동을 하나 보여주셨던 것처럼 아이들이 cat와 stand라는 단어를 듣고 이 단어가 어떤 음소, 몇 개의 음소를 가지고 있는지 이제 구별할 수 있는 그런 능력이 있어야 한다는 말씀을 해주셨어요. Okay, so phonemic awareness is very important before children start actually to learn phonics. Then what about sight words?
Excellent. Now, sight words are words that are read accurately and with very little effort. The lists of sight words that are usually provided by teachers in the U.S., you might know them as Dolch sight words or Fry sight words. They're provided in the early grades, and they are the most commonly used words in English print. We generally learn those first and we memorize them as whole words. We call them high-frequency words as well. The more words that a child has in his sight word bank, the more words he can read accurately and with very little effort, the less time that student has to spend decoding those words or sounding them out. Now, to be clear, most sight words can be decoded using phonics knowledge, but some of them, actually most of them, require more advanced phonics understanding to decode. And we don't want to hold back students from reading those really common words in English print. We want those words to be memorized first as the first words that they read. For example, in the next slide, you'll see a book called The Big Race. Now, in this book, the focus is on the long A sound. So if my students are reading a book like this, I don't want my students to spend so much time and energy decoding words like and, this, to, will, and the. I want them to work and focus their energy on words with the long A sound that maybe we've been practicing that day. Words like Jake, wave, race, and tape. You can see those in the pages on the screen. If students know sight words, then they can focus more on those phonics skills that we're learning. Now, phonics and sight words can certainly be taught at the same time. In fact, that's encouraged. And they are taught systematically in most US schools. Reading is a great way to enforce what a child has learned both in their sight word instruction and in their phonics instruction, specifically because reading those words in isolation and learning those skills in isolation is just not as effective. It's more effective when they can take those new skills into books.
Thank you for the explanation. And so true that it's not really effective to teach them in isolation. And it's always better to teach them in context by reading books, right?
Right.
파닉스와 사이트워드에 대해서 미셸 선생님이 어떤 명확한 설명이었습니다. 미국에서도 파닉스와 사이트워드를 이제 학습을 하고요. 또 단어 학습으로만 끝나는 게 아니라 반드시 책 읽기를 통해서 문맥상에서 그 단어들이 어떻게 쓰이고 어떻게 발음되는지 가르치는 것이 더 효과적이라고 말씀해 주셨어요. 네. Now that we know what phonics and sight words are they really effective, and how do they really help our children learn reading?
Excellent question again. When students have strong phonics skills, they can learn to unlock or decode new words. And this part is so exciting to me because I can see how excited students get when they know what to do when they encounter a new word. Less time is spent trying to figure out how to read new words. We can teach phonics explicitly and we can teach decoding explicitly. And therefore, instead of memorizing every single word as a whole word, students learn how to decode words and the parts of words and decode unfamiliar words when they encounter them. For example, let's say that the book that you see on the screen, that a student wants to read this book. And let's say that the last word in the title is not yet a sight word, meaning students have never encountered it. It's a brand new word for them. With phonics knowledge, students at least know how to decode a part of that word or possibly all of that word. Maybe they'll sound it out letter by letter. Now, when they get to the E or the ER, they might try a few different things, especially if they haven't learned the phonics skill or the syllable of R-controlled syllables or R-controlled vowels. In that case, of course, the teacher would provide the sound, provide the whole word. We don't want to stop a student learning how to decode parts of words just because they haven't encountered the more complex phonics rule. We would provide that word number, and we'd keep providing opportunities to see that word in context until it becomes a sight word. But this is an example of how a strong phonics foundation can help students know what to do when they do encounter that word. Eventually, it'll become a sight word that they no longer have to expend all of that energy decoding. Now, recently in the US, people are paying more attention to how children learn to read, what parts of the brain are responsible for learning to read, and how we can teach foundational literacy skills systematically. It's so important. It's great to know that children can be taught to read no matter their age. It's never too late to teach these foundational skills. As the article in the New York Times, which there's a picture of it there on your screen, the title of this article, Sounding Out a Better Way to Teach Reading. As this article affirms, children can be taught to crack the code of language, and that really means to apply their letter and sound knowledge to decode new words. It's really empowering for them. It's really exciting when a student learns that new words no longer have to be too hard to read or too much work. They've cracked the code of reading.
Yes, they cracked the code. Yeah. So by teaching sight words and phonics, and we're giving them the right tool to jumpstart, to how to read books and build confidence. Once you are able to do something, it gets easier every time you do it, right?
That's right. It's so exciting.
파닉스와 사이트 학습이 미국에서도 요즘 사실 다시 한번 큰 주목을 받고 있어요. 그래서 읽는 방법을 터득해가는 그런 어린 나이에 이루어지면 좋다고 하고, 또 그래야 이후에 처음 보는 생소한 단어나 아니면 어려운 단어도 좀 자신감 있게 한번 트라이하고 읽어낼 수 있는 힘을 기를 수 있다고 합니다. 다시 한번 파닉스와 사이트워드 학습의 중요성을 알 수 있었습니다. 네, 다음 질문으로 넘어가서요. Now that we know why it is so important to teach phonics and sight word, I think the next natural question would be, when is it a good time and how long should we teach them?
Great question. So I want to remind us of, at the very beginning, we talked about phonemic awareness being so crucial before diving into a really strong phonics instruction. So now phonemic awareness starts very early. A lot of growth in that area happening between the ages of 1 and 3. We can help our children develop phonemic awareness by singing songs, by playing rhyming games, by repeating the sounds as they begin to talk and babble and try out sentences. The English alphabet, has 26 letters, but 44 phonemes. So we're making a lot of different sounds with just those 26 letters. So the sounds that children are making and learning are more than just represented by those 26 letters in our alphabet. For example, think about the letter A in English. It makes the long sound, A, it says its name. It makes the short sound, A, like apple, and it also makes a few other sounds in some other English words. So think about all of the sounds that we can make with those letters. Games that focus on those sounds are especially beneficial before school, since beginning in kindergarten, the focus is going to be on letters and sounds. One fun exercise you can do to help your children discern the difference, let's say in the short vowel sounds. This is something I do with my students. Even in second grade, it's a lot of fun. Adding movement. So if you'd like, you can join me. This is, again, just an activity to add some movement to short vowel sounds. Pretend that you're holding an apple, and as you say the short vowel sound ah, pretend to move the apple in front of your body. Apple. Apple. Exactly. Pretend to take your fingers along the edge of your desk as you say edge, edge. Pretend that you've got an itch as you say the short vowel sound for I, the short I sound, itch. Pretend to make your hands into an octopus for the short O sound. Octopus. There are my 8 tentacles. And point up as you say the short U sound. Up. This technique of adding movement to sounding out letters has many benefits, such as increasing engagement, just a lot of fun for students. And it also helps to move that information, the sounds that they hear, into their long-term memory.
That's such a fun activity, but also very memorable. Whenever I move, I tend to also remember things better. That's why sometimes I move a lot when I talk.
Right. Right.
네, 아주 어린 유아를 대상으로 가르칠 때는 방금 선생님이 예시를 들으신 것처럼 동작을 가지고 각 알파벳 글자가 갖고 있는 소리를 알려주는 방법이 있다고 말씀해 주셨어요. Okay, then what about after that? What happens to children when they get to kindergarten?
Right. Great question. So the activity that we just did is so important in helping students distinguish that short vowel sound because those sounds are critical when our students enter school. Those sounds and consonant sounds help form many of the words. In fact, almost all of the words that kindergartners learn to read and spell. We call these CVC words, consonant, vowel, consonant. Think about words like cat and pet. There's a consonant, a vowel, and a consonant spelling those words. In most U.S. schools, incoming kindergartners will be assessed on letters and sounds, and they'll begin learning sight words within the first month of school. Now, if a child, for some reason, does not know his letters, instruction on the alphabet and print concepts does take place before sight word instruction begins. A realistic goal for English-speaking students is that about 5 sight words a week will be learned and reinforced. So you can imagine within 20 weeks, possibly 100 words have been memorized by sight. Now, keep in mind for English language learners, that number might be a little smaller, maybe 3 words per week, so the progress might be a little slower. Dan puts the cheese on the meat. Oh, I'm sorry, and the meat on the pizza. It looks good. Is it time to eat? No, it's time to cook the pizza. And then the book goes on. One really nice thing about using a book like this to practice particular phonics skills is that there are chances for students to encounter challenges that they may be ready for. So we've looked at the double O, right? Look, good, cook, right? Do you notice there's another word that makes the same sound? So much emphasis is on sound, right? There's another word that makes the sound that doesn't match the vowel team, O. See if you can find the word. You might even repeat that page to yourself that we just read.
I already gave them the answers on the screen.
Oh, great. Okay,
Yes.
that's right. It's the word puts. There it is. There it is. As you can see, and you know, something I did want to say for English language learners and what I'm discovering with certain students, if we can call special attention to what our mouths do for certain sounds, it's really helpful for them to identify sounds. So in looks and good and cooks, you can tell that your mouth makes a certain movement, and that same movement is there when you say the word put pattern. So it's a great way to enrich the activity.
Moving on to the upper level.
Yeah, now in grades 3 through 5, students are going to use their combined knowledge of all that wonderful letter sound correspondence that they've been working on in younger grades, syllabication patterns, morphology, roots, and affix throughout their academic careers. I'm still encountering new words that I don't know. So being able to decode unknown words is a valuable lifelong skill. And as with any new learning, consistency is key. So educators, parents out there, aim for several revisits to master.
Moving on to my next question. You are teaching first and second graders currently. We are curious to learn how you teach phonics and sight words to your students. How does a typical lesson look like? And what are the do's and don'ts of teaching them?
Excellent question. So much information here. So I'll start with the do's and don'ts. When teaching phonics and sight words, there are definitely some do's. Remember, educators, parents, when applying these new phonics and sight word skills, we need to remember that applying them in context is crucial. This way, students know that phonics and sight words are part of a bigger picture, reading all kinds of texts in the world around them. Decodable readers, like what we've shown tonight, will provide opportunities for students to see the same letters or words that they've just learned. Also, remember that teaching reading should be fun and engaging. I like to make sight words and phonics into games. You can do this at home. I have one sight game or sight word game that I call Boom that my students just love, using flashcards or game pieces with sight words written on the cards. Students draw a card, they read the word. If they read it correctly, they get to keep the card. But watch out, because nobody wants to grab the boom card. If you grab this, you have to put all of your cards back into the container. This is a fun way to practice sight words since it adds some suspense and some fun. Now for phonics, my phonics lessons are between 15 and 20 minutes in class. I'll model a couple of examples now, starting with identifying, for example, the long E sound. So I might say something like, students, today we're going to learn 2 vowel teams that make the long E sound, E-A and E-E. Let's read the following words on the screen together. See, read, be, beach, need, and clean. Do you hear the long E sound in each of those words? Excellent. Now, let's categorize those words. Which words have a long E sound spelled with E-E? That's right. See, be, and need. Which of those words have a long E sound spelled with E-A? That's right. Read, beach, and clean. Now I might say to my students, let's read some new words with the long E sound, and you tell me which column they belong in. Green, teach, seed, and lean. And then I would expect my students to categorize those words into the categories based on the spelling of the long E sound. So keeping the focus as the long E sound. Good job. Green and seed are spelled with E-E, and teach and lean are spelled with E-A. I would then move on to having the students do some independent work. So I would perhaps give a story or some sentences. I would have my students read those sentences, circle the words with the long E sound, and then categorize them based on the spelling of that long E sound. I want to really emphasize that having time for students to work independently is critical because it gives them time to really internalize what they've just learned. For an example of a phonics lesson that includes spelling, which is part of the ultimate goal, right? For readers and writers to work independently, I may lead my students to first say a word that includes that phonics skill that we just learned. In this case, it's the long E sound spelled with E-E. I may say to my students, say the word speech. Let's stretch that word and say all of the sounds that we hear. S, E, ch. I hear 4 phonemes, 4 different sounds in that word. 4 boxes can be put on my paper. I might ask very systematically, what sound do you hear at the beginning? What letter makes that sound? S. Let's write an S. The second sound, P. What letter makes that sound? P. E. What vowel team are we working on today? E-E. Let's write that in the third box. And the final sound I hear is ch. What letters make the ch sound? And we would write CH. Now, as you can see, this is an activity in spelling, in hearing, identifying, and spelling a word. Excellent. Now, I may extend that practice by asking my students to be the teacher. They may read a decodable reader as the one, like the one you see on your screen, choose a word, read it to a partner, and have that partner act as the student and write it on their whiteboard or on their paper. They can take turns doing this to make it more interactive, which is a lot of fun. As you can see in those previous examples, teaching sight words and phonics should definitely be interactive. Students should definitely be doing most of the work there, and it should be fun, and ultimately, it should have meaning for them in context. So reading a book, spelling a word, doing some work, real life work with that skill is so important. Now, if you find that your child or your student is struggling or getting restless, my advice is break up the activities, maybe add some body movement, try less challenging words until your child is ready to tackle more complex sounds or vowel teams or letter blends.
Thank you for the detailed explanation and demonstration. I think it's I just observed like a very robust lesson that you have with your students. And I must say that your students are very blessed to have you as your teacher.
Thank you.
선생님이 어떻게 수업을 하시는지 지금 하나의 레슨을 되게 상세하게 스텝 바이 스텝 보여주셨는데요. 먼저 이제 선생님이 음가와 글자를 소개하는 활동에서 그다음에 전체, 그다음에 그룹, 그다음에 개별 활동까지 이제 말하기, 읽기, 쓰기 모든 게 다 아우러진 꽉 찬 레슨을 보여주셨습니다. 이렇게 15분에서 20분 동안 이렇게 쉴 틈 없이 잘 짜여진 레슨을 받는 학생들이 좀 부럽다는 생각이 들었네요. 예. My final question. Some children find phonics and sight words, a bit boring, and parents, also get frustrated. They don't know where to start. Any advice that you would like to give to them?
Sure. If you are feeling that way, I guess my question would be, is it an activity in memorization, which does tend to be really boring? And if that is yes, I would say instead of a boring exercise in memorization, make sight words and phonics instruction quick and fun and engaging. Help students see the connection between what they're learning and its practical application. Books like the ones that we've shared today are great because you can teach that sight word or teach that phonics skill and then immediately review it in the context of a fun story. And remember also, it's never too late to learn phonics. So if you're feeling maybe frustrated or worried that your child isn't learning quickly enough, please remind yourself that it is never too late to learn phonics. Keep in mind also that any frustration that we feel as parents or educators, that could really impact how a child feels about himself, about how he feels about reading. That might impact his progress. We want our kids and our students to feel confident. We want them to love reading, to unlock new words and feel the power of what reading really can be. So approach any phonics and sight words lesson with that in mind. Look at it as an opportunity to empower them, to have a lot of fun.
Thank you, Michelle, for the encouraging words. I think it's so true that, we want children to have a positive experience, especially for very young children. And many times it really depends on us adults. So a positive vibe, with fun activities, lots of movements, something that you showed today, I think can make learning engaging and enjoyable. 네. 선생님께서 해주신 마지막 말씀이 좀 와닿는데, 어른들이 느끼는 감정과 어떤 그런 것들이 고스란히 아이들한테 전달될 수 있기 때문에, 되도록이면 어린 나이일수록 좀 독서 경험이 긍정적으로 남을 수 있게, 노력이 필요할 것 같습니다. So those were all the questions that we kind of discussed together, and we are showing it to the audience today. But I'm sure the audience would like to ask you more questions. May I take some from the chat? Would that be okay?
Absolutely. How fun.
Alright. 그러면은 준비한 인터뷰는 여기까지고요. 혹시 궁금한 점이 있으시면 지금 채팅창에 남겨주시면 되겠습니다. 그리고 오늘 지금 현장에 저와 함께 해주고 계신 분들은 별도로 방송을 마친 다음에 제가 질의응답 시간을 갖도록 하겠습니다. 조금만 기다려주세요. Alright. Let's see what questions they have. Did you have a class today, Michelle?
I did.
You did?
Yes.
Did you teach phonics today?
I did. We studied something so neat today.
Oh, really?
I like to pair up my phonics instruction with some fun facts about animals. And today we learned that squirrels, when they are chased by predators or when they possibly get their tail stuck in a fence, that tail can actually snap off. So we were looking at endings of words that we can kind of break off and study the root word. So that was so much fun.
Oh, that's really interesting. That's a really clever idea.
Yeah.
미셸 선생님께서 오늘도 수업을 하셨다고 하네요. 파닉스 수업을. 근데 과학 수업이랑 약간 접목해서 하시나 봐요. squirrel 가지고 단어를 나눠서 root, 단어의 어떤 근간이 되는 루트와 뒤에 딸린 이제 suffix라고 해야죠. 그거를 떼어내는 활동을 하셨대요. That's a fun activity. And questions are coming in. Ooh.
Right.
I think somebody asked JW Kim, 단어 스펠링 외우기는 언제부터 시키면 효과적일까요? Somebody asked, like, when would be a good time to have kids memorize spelling? So, I mean, we are showing the word and then they are reading aloud the spelling, right? But I think what she means here is like when you just say the word, let's say cat, and this child should be able to spell out C-A-T. When will be a good time to start asking kids to do that?
I think right along with phonics instruction, I don't think that there's any bad time to ask students to represent a word that they hear or say, because again, phonics, if we think back to, phonics is that systematic relationship, right? The study of the systematic relationship between sounds that they say and hear and the written representation. So I would say first, model. Oh, you just said the word cat. Let me show you how we can write that word. And then have them do it, possibly with a partner, and check each other's work, and then alone. I will say in my class or in my school, students are given what's called a spelling inventory, where we do test them on letter sounds, short vowels, long vowel teams, blends and digraphs, and inflected endings. So I think it's perfectly acceptable to have a first or second grader represent those words in writing.
Okay. Right. 스펠링 학습은 파닉스랑 함께 해주셔도 된다고 말씀해 주셨어요. 파닉스 자체가 소리와 글자의 연관성을 보여주는 어떤 시스테매틱한 어떤 그런 학습이기 때문에 그때 아이들한테 가르쳐도 상관없고 중요한 거는 선생님이 모델링을 해야겠죠. 먼저 이제 단어를 불러주고 이 단어는 이 글자와 이 글자로 이루어져 있어. 한번 같이 써볼까 해서 모델링을 통해서 하면 좋다고 말씀해 주셨어요. Oh, I think there were a lot of other stuff that I missed, but I think later you can rewatch the YouTube and then, but basically I think you're right that, I mean, phonics is such a systematical, system where they teach the sound, the relationship between sound and words. So as soon as they know, I think they should be able to spell it out.
Right.
Right. All right. Wow, there's so many. I don't know. And they're very long questions.
Oh,
This one is actually a good question. Ginny L said, 이제 한국의 EFL 상황에서는 영어를 늦게 시작하는 아이들도 있는데요. 시간적인 여유가 부족하니까 이제 파닉스와 사이트를 건너뛰고 단어 암기나 독해 문제 풀기 같은 내용으로 바로 들어가기 때문에 이제 아이들이 힘들어합니다. 이런 경우에 파닉스와 사이트워드를 빠르게 학습해야 할 경우 사용할 수 있는 방법이 있다면 뭐가 있을까요? 하셨어요. So it sounds long, but let me translate. So let's say in an EFL environment like Korea, where English is not a first language, some students, they somehow didn't happen to learn phonics and sight words, and they end up in grade 2 or 3, let's say. So in that case, because we are out of time, we just go straight away of memorizing words and also doing reading skill comprehension, like, find out the main idea, detail, blah, blah. But then those kids really struggle to read. So
and
is there a way?
decoding.
Yeah, decoding. So is there a way to teach them in a faster way? Because we don't have 2 or 3 years, you know what I mean? Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I would say use their knowledge already. If they're already reading, but let's say that the phonics foundation has kind of, there are some gaps. I would say first, do an assessment on a spelling inventory. And, there are lots of resources online for a phonics assessment with made up words that aren't real words. Maybe that, the students don't have an opportunity to memorize them because they're nonsense words. And then you can really see the gap. So maybe these students already know their short vowel sounds. So you're not going to spend time going all the way back to short vowel sounds when they already know those. But let's say that the inventory or the spelling inventory or the phonics assessment has shown that they don't know blends. You can jump right in and say, you're so good at reading blends. Let's unlock the mystery of why these letters work the way they do together. And then I would give them real world examples, like now go in your book and find those blends so that they can start seeing the relationship between
I see.
the phonics skills and parts of the word.
Okay.
So really we're kind of working backwards, right?
Backwards, right.
They've got the whole word, but now we're showing them how they can start breaking up those words to see parts of words that then they can apply that skill into new words. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. So they already know how to read it, I guess, by sight. And then just try to have them figure out, how you were able to read this word by doing this. That's how you were able to do it and then apply to the other skills.
That's right.
Yeah. 지금 선생님 말씀해 주신 게 중요한 거는 먼저 진단을 해야 한다고 해요. 그 아이가 어느 부분에서 어느 파닉스 스킬이 부족한지. 처음부터 진짜 알파벳부터 단모부터 할 수는 없잖아요. 그래서 이 아이가 통으로 읽는 이미 능력이 있기 때문에 nonsense word, 말이 안 되지만 파닉스로 읽어야 하는 그런 단어들을 가지고 낸 그런 테스트가 있다고 해요. 그래서 그런 걸로 아이를 이제 시험해가지고 아이가 블렌딩이 부족하구나 아니면은 요음가 좀 이렇게 딥성이라고 해가지고 두 개의 자음이 붙인 그런 것들이 부족하구나라는 걸 파악한 다음에 그다음 다시 책으로 돌아가가지고 네가 읽을 수 있는 이 단어들이 사실은 이런 블렌딩 과정을 통해서 읽히는 단어들이야라고 설명을 해주면서 계속 어떻게 보면 re-engineering backwards 거꾸로 이 단어를 네가 어떻게 읽게 됐는지를 가르쳐주는 방법이 있다고 하십니다. Thank you. That was a really comprehensive answer. I got it. I don't know if the audience got it. I'm sure they got it.
I'm sure they did.
I think we will take one more question before we end this session. 이 질문도 제가 많이 받는 것 같아요. So 김선영 님께서 short vowel과 long vowel이 비슷한 발음이 있을 때 어떤 글자인지 헷갈리는 아이는 어떻게 지도하면 좋을까요? So they are like vowels that short vowels and long vowels, they have like similar pronunciation. And then all the letters, on top of that, there are letters, and then kids get confused. Is there a way to, make sure they differentiate it and they learn it properly?
That's such a great question. And, so speech is not my area of expertise. So I want to say that there are certain speech sounds that are within a normal range that with development, students can learn how to say certain sounds. And it's within the normal range if they're not quite enunciating correctly. So I just want to say that first. But as a teacher, I have also come, to this challenge of my students aren't quite discerning the difference between the short a, and the short e, eh. So then what I do is I have them pay special attention to the way my mouth makes that sound. So I open my mouth a little wider and I say, and I have them repeat that. And then I very quickly provide an example of apple, apple, and then maybe write it. Then I'll say, my mouth doesn't open as wide. And I say, egg, edge. And it's just repetition and having them copy my kind of the way my mouth forms the sound, or what my mouth does to form the sound. But you're right, it is rather tricky to discern if it doesn't come naturally, especially learning it as a second language. I think more practice and more reading out loud and recognizing the sound will come with more practice. So,
Thank
I hope
you.
that helps.
선생님은 스피치 전문가는 아니시지만 이제 교실에서는 이제 가르치실 때 이런 상황이 발생하신다고 해요. 그래서 그럴 때는 아이들한테 그 입 모양에 집중을 해서 그러니까 에하고 에 사운드 있을 때 입이 더 많이 벌어지고 적게 벌어지고 하면서 한번 만져보면서 어디가 소리가 나는지를 이렇게 아이들한테 알려주면서 가르쳐 주신다고 합니다. 그리고 그런 다음에 바로 이제 단어도 보여주고 그 다음에 다른 책들도 보여줘서 이 소리가 글자와 이제 문장 이런 걸로 다 연결될 수 있게끔 해주시는 것 같아요. I think there are a lot of more questions coming in, but I think we are running out of time. So I will take these questions. And would it be okay, Michelle, if I take them and then later, if I cannot answer them, reach out to you?
Absolutely. I'm always happy to talk about that with educators and parents. I'm more than happy to. It makes me very excited. Yes.
I knew it. I knew you will say yes. Thank you for being with us today and for all the great tips and insights. I think many of us will start right away with the 15-minute, phonics lesson starting today.
Great.
And do you have any final words before you say goodbye to our audience?
Well, thank you again for having me. Thank you for your participation, audience. And just remember, keep reading and keep loving it.
Thank you. 역시 제가 생각한 그 열정적인 미셸 선생님이었습니다. 오늘 소중한 시간 내주신 미셸 선생님께 다시 한번 감사드립니다. Thank you again for today, and we really hope to see you in person in Korea.
What a dream. That would be amazing.
Thank you, and we'll see you again. Bye.
Bye.
All right. 네, 미셸 선생님과의 오늘 세션 아이들에게 파닉스와 사이트워드를 가르치는데 도움이 되셨나요? 네, 한국에서뿐만 아니라 미국에서도 아이들의 문해력 향상에 대한 관심이 최근에 많이 높아지고 있어요. 그래서 리딩의 기초가 되는 파닉스와 사이트워드에 대해서 오늘 많은 얘기 들을 수 있는 그런 강연이었습니다. 오늘 지난주에 이어서요. 오늘 강연 후기 남겨주시면 저희가 추첨을 통해서 선물을 드리도록 하겠습니다. 잊지 말고 꼭 해시태그 스콜라스틱, 해시태그 스콜라스틱 특강 이 두 개를 꼭 포함하셔서 남겨주시면 감사하겠습니다. 이렇게 해서 스콜라스틱이 준비한 신학기 맞이 특강 1, 2탄 모두 마쳤습니다. 네, 시청해주신 분들께 감사드리며 저희는 다음에 더 좋은 강연으로 찾아뵙도록 하겠습니다. 감사합니다. Thank you everyone. Have a great day and have a great school year. Bye!